And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 69. This is the Week 11 preview episode where the Cincinnati Bengals, with a record of 4-6, traveled west to take on the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday Night Football. NBC primetime. Chargers have a record of 6-3. They're coming in on a 3-game winning streak and looking to keep that alive against a quality opponent, quote unquote, in the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals are looking to get their season not only back on track, but the Bengals, this is their season. From here on out, every week, every game is do or die. It's beyond being a must-win game. This is 100% a must-win game. They can't lose their 7th game of the season. At this point in the season, they might not be mathematically eliminated, but for all intents and purposes, losing 7 of your first 11 games, you're basically eliminated, because to even have a chance, Bengals would have to win every game. And after this, they've got the bye week. Bengals have a bye week after this game. So they've got actually kind of 2 bye weeks sandwiched up against this game with the Chargers, because they just played the Ravens last Thursday night. So instead of playing Sunday, they get that extra 3 days of rest, which Joe Burrow really will need because of all those hits that he took against the Ravens last week. But they've got 10 days to prepare for the Chargers, and then they've got their bye week immediately after the Chargers game. They don't play another game for 2 weeks after that. So this is a chance for the Bengals to have a good feeling going into that bye, get a little bit of positive vibes going on, because the opposite is also true. If they lose this game heading into the bye, take them to 4-7, guys could start mentally checking out, and that's what you don't want to have happen. So hopefully the Bengals are able to take advantage of this road trip. Bengals went out to California one day earlier than they usually do. Typically for road games, Bengals, they're trying to save money on travel and accommodations, so they get there as late as possible. They'll show up like the day before or the night before, check into the hotel. All right, can we take a Greyhound there? All good. But in this case, they wanted to go out and get their bodies on the right clock, because it's going to be a 5:20 local time start, because it's 8:20 on the East Coast for the Sunday night game, 5:20 on the West Coast. It's going to be a weird time for them to be playing a football game. Not only traveling out west, your body has to readjust to where the sun's different, but also a different time of day. Instead of playing at 1 o'clock, although they just played their last game against Baltimore on Thursday night. But Jamar Chase, they told him, this is going to be at 5:20. Jamar Chase has no idea what time the game is, and hopefully he doesn't need extra sleep or need to adjust his schedule. But some of these guys, hopefully this isn't too much of an adjustment for them. They've been in the league at this point, but you never know. Sometimes you get weird results when West Coast teams travel to the East or vice versa. The team just doesn't adjust, or some teams adjust better than others. Hopefully the Bengals are able to get an adjustment. But then, another perfect example, the New York Jets played on the Thursday night before the Bengals. So they similarly had extra rest to prepare for their next game, which is going to be against the Arizona Cardinals. Jets, with all that extra rest, came out super flat. They got beat 31-6 by the Cardinals. The coach, after the game, said, that's on me. I didn't get these guys prepared hard enough. Everybody around the league just said the Jets looked like they gave up in that game. So hopefully a similar thing doesn't happen with the Bengals. Hopefully there's no letdown after their primetime Thursday night game, and they come out firing all cylinders against the Chargers. And they're going to need it, because this Chargers team, head coach by Jim Harbaugh. Everybody knows Jim Harbaugh he was most recently head coach at Michigan for I don't know how many seasons before this, but right before this, he was the head coach at Michigan. They won the college national championship with him, and they were a running football team, but he had all those guys, buying into his philosophy, into his culture, whatever you want to call it. Had all the guys mentally, psychologically dedicated to the program, dedicated to the football team. And so you kind of see that not quite the same way, because obviously Jim Harbaugh also played quarterback in the NFL for a number of years. He played for the Colts, the Bears. Can't remember how many different teams he played for. I think he also played for the Chargers, San Diego Chargers, when they were in San Diego, and now he's the head coach that they're in Los Angeles. So he's got some history with this franchise himself as a player, which is interesting. And so he kind of understands I feel like the Chargers players, or really all of Jim Harbaugh's players, he was the head coach for the 49ers when they went to the Super Bowl, and all of his players seem like they have a great deal of respect, as you often hear from players around the league whenever they have a coach who played in the league and had a decent amount of time in the league, not just like a backup, for a one season or something, but played for a significant amount of the time in the league. You can always tell that the players respect that coach more. So we see guys like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Andre Iosivas, like they talk about their wide receivers coach, Troy Walters. He was an NFL receiver, but he also won the the Biletnikoff Award in college for the best wide receiver. I'm thinking Bednarik was a linebacker, but Biletnikoff is the wide receiver award. And so when you have coaches like that, players respect him. I'm dancing around the fact that Zach Taylor is the Bengals head coach, yet he did not actually play in the NFL himself. There was a long story in the Zach Taylor weekly press conference this week where he was talking about the first NFL game he ever went to was a Jim Harbaugh Chicago Bears game, and his dad, being a football coach with a bunch of connections, was able to get Zach Taylor and his brother Press into a Bears practice one day, and they got to meet Jim Harbaugh. So apparently he has a picture of him as a child sitting next to Jim Harbaugh as an NFL football player. And again, nobody brought up the fact that, wow, Jim Harbaugh played in the NFL and you did not. But so that's going to be kind of a pseudo storyline of, oh, Zach Taylor met this actual good football player when he was a little kid, and now they're going to coach against each other in the NFL. I could not care any less about that storyline, if you couldn't tell. I have no use for that kind of stuff. So who Zach Taylor met when he was a little kid does not concern me in the slightest. I'm more concerned about what Zach Taylor is going to come up with in terms of beating this Chargers defense, because the Chargers have one of the top defenses in the NFL. They just came off a game against the Ravens, who basically had the top defense in the NFL overall. Chargers are number 3 in overall defense. But the thing about the Chargers, these two teams are kind of mirror opposites of each other in that Bengals have a pretty good offense, but not a great defense. Chargers don't have a stellar offense, but they have a really good defense. So it's kind of strength against strength, week on week in these two situations. Bengals have a strong offense going up against the Chargers' strong defense, and vice versa. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of those wins out. I'm not sure. I haven't done my research about the special teams to know who's got the edge in the special teams game, but Bengals have been missing a few field goals this season. They haven't punted lately. Zach Taylor has been decided to go for it instead of using the weapon that we have, Ryan Rico, at punter. So I don't know who Chargers. I haven't done the research. I'll be honest with you on there. Don't know about the special teams, but the Chargers have a good running game, and Justin Herbert was one of the quarterbacks that people put in the same discussion with Joe Burrow when they were coming out of the draft in 2020. It was Joe Burrow, Tua from Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Herbert from Oregon. And all three of those quarterbacks have had degrees of success, varying degrees of success. None of them have been out-and-out busts. They've all got contract extensions. That's the biggest sign of whether or not they're good, is, I guess, except for Daniel Jones. But in most cases, you don't sign a guy to a big quarterback contract extension unless he's pretty good. So Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, and they got their contracts signed in the same offseason, and that was one of the things people were talking about, was who's going to get the bigger contract. In the end, it ended up being Joe Burrow got a slightly better contract, slightly more money than Justin Herbert, but both of these guys are super mega multi-millionaires. They're both doing fine, and they're both playing excellent football. But Joe Burrow is playing a little bit better statistically this season. If you look at the just passing numbers, Joe Burrow has almost 2,700 yards, 24 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Justin Herbert, only 1,900 yards, so about 800 yards less than Joe Burrow. Only 11 touchdowns compared to Joe Burrow's 24, but Justin Herbert only has one interception on the season, and I think it goes back 7 games. He's on a 7-game streak of not throwing any interceptions, which is a Chargers franchise record. So one of the things that the Chargers have been doing exceptionally well this year is not giving the ball away, not committing turnovers. So if I go check the statistics real quick here, Los Angeles Chargers have a +9 turnover differential. They've given the ball away only 4 times, but they've taken it away 13 times, and that's good for second best in the NFL. Buffalo Bills have a +13 ratio through 10 games. They've committed 6 turnovers and forced 19, so pretty impressive by Buffalo's defense. Only the Minnesota Vikings have forced more turnovers at 20, but the Vikings have also committed a lot of turnovers also. But Chargers are doing a good job of taking the ball away and not giving the ball away on offense, and that's been one of the key reasons why the Bengals have been losing a number of these games is, like we saw in last week's game, not being able to force turnovers on defense and committing that Chase Brown fumble or getting the ball stripped away. Obviously, Chase Brown didn't just fumble by himself. It was forced by Marlon Humphrey. Good job by Marlon Humphrey, the Ravens defender, ripping the ball out of Chase Brown's hands. But that's just one more giveaway, one more possession Bengals aren't able to score on. So they're going to have to do a good job of holding onto the ball. Another thing to watch for the Bengals when they're on offense is going to be the newest addition, new running back, Khalil Herbert, that they got in that trade for the Chicago Bears. We saw him only a couple times in last week's game, and he fumbled. The only time they gave him the ball, he fumbled it. He didn't fumble away. He managed to recover the fumble. But now that he's been in the program for a couple weeks, he's more with the system. Hopefully Khalil Herbert will be able to contribute in some kind of a meaningful way on offense, because we know Chase Brown isn't going to be able to do everything himself. And the Bengals actually released the other running back that they had active on the roster last week, Kendrick Milton. They released him, and then the Bengals activated their free agent tight end, Cam Grandy, who had been on the practice squad. They brought him back and forth. Now they made him full on the active roster full time. And it's still surprising to me, but I guess I haven't been at practice. But Cam Grandy was a free agent that they brought in, and they have this 6th-round draft pick, Tanner McLachlan, who has not played at all season, even though he was on the active roster. He's been inactive, healthy scratch. Somehow this guy, Cam Grandy, has made a name for himself on the Bengals and was able to leapfrog the draft pick. So good for him. Hopefully he's able to make some plays in the game. But interesting that the Bengals had a lot of draft picks that made the roster, but so far we haven't seen a ton of them making really amazing plays. Like Amarius Mims, he was starting by default because Trent Brown injured his knee and is out for the rest of the season. And some people, I feel like it's kind of rose-colored glasses when people are saying, oh, Amarius Mims is playing amazing. He's so good. Like, he's playing okay. He's playing all right for a rookie. But I wouldn't say he's, amazing. He's not on the way to making any Pro Bowls anytime soon. Like, he still looks a little bit, I don't know the way to describe it, like stiff, a little bit slow in his movement. Obviously, he's 6'8", 360, so I don't expect him to be like super quick and fast. But guys have been able to get around him a little bit more frequently than you would like if he's supposed to be, the next Orlando Pace or a next Anthony Munoz or so one of these like all Pro Bowl left tackles or something like that. I don't know. We haven't seen it yet, but that's not to say he can't get there. He's a very young guy. Hasn't played a lot of football, so he can still get there. It's just like when you watch him, it doesn't quite look like a fully finished product. He's still a work in progress. So I'd say the jury is still out on Amarius Mims. And the same thing with all the rest of these rookies. Like, I'm not writing anything in stone with these rookies, but I'm just have been a little bit disappointed we haven't seen more from the rookies. Like they were getting in the game early, and I was encouraged by the fact that they were getting playing time. But then, okay, they're playing, but they haven't really shown me a whole lot of good play to get excited about. So hopefully they can, change my mind, prove me wrong, go out and show something interesting. But speaking of rookies, the leading receiver for the Los Angeles, I almost called them the San Diego Chargers, but Los Angeles Chargers sounds weird because you got the Oakland Raiders and the San Diego Chargers. They all moved to Los Angeles and Las Vegas. But anyway, leading receiver for these Los Angeles Chargers is Ladd McConkey, rookie himself, and their leading rusher is J.K. Dobbins. So a couple of young guys. J.K. Dobbins was with the Ravens, and actually he's backed up by Gus Edwards. So two former Ravens running backs, and I guess that makes sense. Like Jim Harbaugh, his brother is John Harbaugh, who is the head coach of the Ravens. So he got a few players from his brother's team. I think he got maybe a coach or two to coach the defense. And so they've got a few guys that were recommended by Jim's brother, John. And maybe he got a little recon info going into this game. Jim may have talked to his brother, John, and say, hey, you just played the Bengals last week on Thursday night. What do you got on these guys? Give me a little inside scoop here. So hopefully the Bengals can make whatever adjustments they had against the Ravens to come out on top against this Chargers team. It's going to be a tough matchup. Chargers have a pretty good offensive line, especially their tackles. Joe also a rookie. I think he was a top 5 draft pick. And then they also have Rashawn Slater at right tackle. So 2 premier tackles on their offensive line. It's going to be a tough matchup. Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard and all the rest of those edge rushers for the Bengals are going to have their work cut out for them. Speaking of Trey Hendrickson, he was on the injury report this week. I think he was limited a couple days. Let me check the injury report here. Limited on Wednesday, and then Trey did not practice Thursday or Friday. He was listed with neck, but also rest and personal reasons. So the Bengals on Friday, they got apparently like a walkthrough Friday morning and then took their flight to Los Angeles, to the West Coast. Apparently Trey Hendrickson did not travel with the team on Friday for personal reasons. Trey is going to apparently fly out by himself on Saturday and meet up with the team when he gets out there. They don't obviously need to go into what the personal reason is, but it's just kind of interesting that Trey, if I wanted to speculate, which sure, why not? I'll speculate. I'll say that he just didn't feel like going out a day early and would rather stay at home with his wife and whatever she's got going on. Maybe they had a date planned or whatever, and he was like, actually, you know what? I'd rather not go out there with you guys. And Trey Hendrickson is in that situation where he's in the last year of his contract. He's already a little bit pissed off with the team because they didn't give him a raise, and now he leads the NFL in sacks with 11. So he's proven that he's playing at a high level and well-deserving of a raise that the team didn't decide to give him in the offseason. And he had requested a trade, and he said he was threatening to even retire if he didn't get that raise. But then he came back like a week later and was like, oh, yeah, never mind. But that's just one more reason or one more explanation why Trey Hendrickson may make a decision to maybe not go along with whatever the team wants him to do. And if he's got something personal going on, maybe that will take precedent. But I'm sure he's a professional. He's going to be ready to go when he gets out there. But that's just one example of when you get late in the season like this, guys, what are they really playing for? They're playing for themselves. Like Trey Hendrickson said in a quote in a story on ESPN, the biggest thing he's playing for is the name on the back of his jersey. He said the name on the front of the jersey is important, but the name on the back of the jersey is even more important. And so that's really what Trey Hendrickson is worried about protecting his name, his legacy, doing whatever he can. And some people would say that's a selfish way to look at it, but I mean, as a player, yeah, you totally have to protect yourself, watch out for yourself, because these NFL teams are going to use you up and spit you out. And, the Bengals have only recently started inducting former players into their Ring of Honor or whatever it was. But, prior to that, there's a lot of guys who came and went without any kind of recognition. And, you think that the team went out of their way to do. I can't say that they didn't. Maybe the team did a good job of taking care of their former players. But from Trey Hendrickson's point of view, he's been traded around. If he got released and went on to the next team, I'm sure he wouldn't shed a tear about it. He's not going to be all broken up. Oh, no, the Bengals will let me go. Like, life will go on for Trey Hendrickson. So I feel like hopefully Zach Taylor is able to find some way to keep everybody together, working as a team all the way throughout the season. But we'll see. They got to win. They got to win some games. As Paul Brown's quote says in the Bengals locker room, winning makes believers of us all. So if you're not winning, vice versa, it may make doubters out of us all. If you keep losing games, more doubt is going to start creeping into people's minds. In this game, the Bengals are 1.5 point underdogs. They're on the road, but that means that the people still have a lot of respect for this Bengals team. And I think especially if they get T. Higgins back, who has been out for the past 3 games. They have not had a lot of success this season without T. Higgins. He's missed 5 of the 10 games. They're hoping to get him back from that quad injury, and T. Higgins was a limited participant in practice all week this week, and he's going in with no injury designation. So T. Higgins all set to play. That's going to be big for the Bengals offense and Jamar Chase, although Jamar Chase had 264 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns against the Ravens last week. I wouldn't say that his performance was necessarily hurt too much by not having T. Higgins out there, but they lost the game. So obviously they could have got more out of their offense to score more points. And obviously having a weapon like T. Higgins out there can only help. Sticking on the Bengals injury front for a second here, one of the other critical players that the Bengals need on offense is Orlando Brown, left tackle. He did not practice Wednesday, got a limited practice on Thursday, and then did not practice Friday. He is questionable heading into this game. If, again, just like T. Higgins, he's been out, Bengals offense, they had Cody Ford in there, and, he's a backup for a reason. He played all right, but it wasn't great. He gave up some pressure. Joe Burrow was running for his life back there. I forgot to mention this in the recap episode last time, but Joe Burrow got hit 13 times officially in the game against the Ravens, and a number of hits that were close to being late hits. One from Marlon Humphrey off the left side got Joe Burrow right in the ribs, and you could see he was grimacing on the sidelines. That one definitely did not feel good for Joe Burrow. So that was good that he got that extra time to rest up in between these games, because 13 hits, he was getting knocked over. He since they were playing on a grass field, his uniform was all covered in grass stains. So Joe Burrow was getting knocked around a lot in that game, and getting Orlando Brown back and solidifying that protection up front would be a welcome for everybody, Joe Burrow included. Bengals also saw B.J. Hill was listed as it did not practice Wednesday, then limited Thursday, Friday. He's questionable going into the game with a knee injury. That was different because B.J., he had different, I forget, it was a groin or a back. I forget, I don't think it was a knee, but whatever it was. B.J. Hill looks like he's questionable going into this game. Charlie Jones still out, did not practice all week, and he's going to be out for the game. So they're going to have Trenton Irwin and Jermaine Burton returning punts and kicks respectively, as they did the last game, I would imagine. And so Orlando Brown, he's questionable. That would be big if they can get him back. That's everybody that's questionable. And then Joe Bocci, linebacker, did not practice all week with a hip injury. He is doubtful. Otherwise, everybody looks good to go for the Bengals. Alex Kappa had an illness in the week, but he should be okay. Logan Wilson had a little bit of a quad. He should be good to go. On the Chargers side of things, they're coming off a bye week. So the Chargers they're not coming off a bye week. They just played the Titans last week. But they've already had their bye week, and they're relatively healthy. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, their 2 edge rushers, were listed. Khalil Mack did not practice at all this week, but he does not have any injury designation. So apparently Khalil Mack is going to be able to play without practicing. And he's been in the league for I don't know how many seasons, this has got to be like his 10th season in the league already. He's in his mid-30s, so he's played plenty, he's practiced plenty, doesn't really need to practice. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be playing in the game, I'm sure, because it's going to be Sunday night. This is the type of primetime matchups. This is why you play football. If you want to be an NFL player, you want to be in front of a national TV audience, everybody looking at you in the biggest spotlights. So these are the type of games players want to play if they are healthy enough to play at all. I'm sure Khalil Mack is going to be out there. Joey Bosa is going to be out there. Otherwise, Deion Leonard was questionable for the Chargers, but everybody else looks good to go for the Chargers. Nobody dealing with anything. So the Chargers are going to be completely healthy going into this game. It's going to be a tough matchup for the Bengals. And I feel like I definitely can't predict the outcome since it's going to be so close, 1.5 points for the Chargers. But I wouldn't say that it's going to be necessarily a blowout either way, because the Chargers, their offense isn't so explosive. They're efficient. They're good at. They're a good complement for their defense, basically, because they don't score a lot of points. They don't have like an explosive passing game or running game or anything like that, but they don't turn it over, so they can score enough points to generally win the game. And Bengals defense should be good enough to stop them, but vice versa. Chargers defense is so good, I don't think the Bengals is going to be running wild like they have against scoring 35 points like they have against some of these other teams. I think the biggest statistic everybody's been throwing around is the fact that the Chargers have not allowed an opponent to score more than 20 points this year. And that's like the first time that's happened in like 15 or 20 years or something like that. So Chargers defense in terms of scoring has been very stingy. So it's going to be a challenge for this Bengals offense to put up the same amount of points that they are used to putting up. They've been scoring, 30 points, it seems like almost every week. A little bit of a different animal in this Chargers defense. Part of that we also know is Chargers have Derwin James, who had been a safety for most of his career, but this season they moved him down into that nickel cornerback slot where he's almost playing like an extra linebacker or like a fast linebacker or something, kind of an in-between hybrid player where he's still able to play man-to-man coverage on like tight ends and running backs and stuff like that, but they still have him close to the line of scrimmage because he's so big and physical. They can get him involved in making tackles in the run game. So he's like Mike Hilton, but about 50 pounds heavier. Because Mike Hilton's like 5'9", 175. Derwin James is, like 6'2", 225. So a huge difference maker on defense for the Chargers. They got a ton of guys that make difference all over the place. But this game, as every game for the rest of this, hopefully every game is an important, critical game, because that would mean that the Bengals are winning games, staying in the hunt. They can't afford to lose any more of these games. So this is, again, like we said, every game from now on, must-win game. Got to have this one. And to watch this game, you got to tune into NBC, Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth. They're going to be calling the game. And as I always say, the biggest thing is I hope for no injuries. That's the biggest thing. We don't want anybody to get seriously injured, because nothing would hurt your chances worse than having an injury to one of your best players. Both these teams are going into this game relatively healthy, so that's good, because we don't want any excuses. We don't want anybody to say, oh well, T. Higgins was out, so that's why the Bengals lost. No, Bengals should have most of their team up and ready to go that they can, and same thing with the Chargers. So this duel between these two quarterbacks, the last time, I forgot the last time these two teams played was back in December of 2021. Chargers came into Cincinnati and beat the Bengals 42-22 or like 42-21. Blowout game. They got away from the Bengals at the end. It was pretty close all the way up until there was a late Joe Mixon fumble that got returned for 63 yards, and then the Chargers scored a couple more times after that to make the score kind of out of reach. But Joe Burrow's first game in the NFL, I remember that. I remember Joe Burrow's first ever game was against the Chargers, and that was in that COVID pandemic season when there was no fans in the stands for that game. Joe Burrow went out there and had A.J. Green looked like it was going to be the game-winning touchdown at the end, but A.J. Green got called for offensive pass interference. Bengals ended up losing Joe Burrow's first game in the NFL to the Chargers, but it was not to Justin Herbert. That was the game that Tyrod Taylor started for the Chargers. And then I think the next week, Tyrod Taylor injured his ribs in the game against the Bengals. And then the next week, they tried to inject him with a painkiller into the ribs and punctured his lung, and he got fluid into his lung. So that necessitated Justin Herbert starting in week 2. But Bengals have faced Justin Herbert before. I think he's beat them in his only time facing the Bengals. So this will be a chance for Joe Burrow to get a little revenge on his draft class partner, Justin Herbert. Everybody always compares the two of them, and everybody says that Justin Herbert has a much stronger arm, and Joe Burrow would even admit that. He's not going to try to pretend like his arm is as powerful and strong as Justin Herbert, because Justin Herbert just throws those frozen ropes, those lasers all over the field, where for the Bengals defense, they can't let up and assume, oh, this guy is too far down the field. Justin Herbert won't be able to throw it to him, because just when they start thinking that, that's when Herbert launches one straight over their heads and for like a 70-yard touchdown. He's like Anthony Richardson before Anthony Richardson came into the league. Hopefully that does not happen, but we know Cam Taylor-Britt is susceptible to that type of long pass. Hopefully Bengals defense has some answers, but we'll see, and then we'll come back and break it all down after the game in our recap episode. But hopefully everybody's excited to watch this game. I am too. If you got any comments, questions, leave them in the episode notes there. Leave comments. What do you think is going to happen in this game? Subscribe, give me a thumbs up, positive rating, all that kind of stuff, so more people can find out about this podcast. But until the next episode, I'm going to leave you with a All Dey and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.